Continuing with Brent Allen Winter's Declaration of 76, United States Constitution, a common lawyer comments, clause by clause, pages 76 to 81. Section 8, Clause 1. The Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises, to pay the debts and provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States. But all duties, imposts, and excises shall be uniform throughout the United States. Comment. The power to lay and collect taxes, taking of a person's property, and to declare war, sending a man to kill or be killed, are Congress's two greatest powers, never to be allowed in the hand of any other. This clause ties our Constitution to its preamble in order to narrow government's powers, especially limiting taxing and spending powers, to three purposes: to pay the debts and provide for the common defense and general welfare. The preamble thus distinguishes paying, providing, and promoting. Indeed, the people's support of the general government is a light burden as long as that government never supports one group to the exclusion of another. Providing for the general welfare of the United States is to foster the good of the entire country, without exception, never of one group but not another. Such favoritism fosters never-ending ruthless attempts of one group to use government power to plunder another, the key device for such plundering being the income tax. Of great note, this clause gives all power of taxation and tax collection to Congress, citing three kinds of taxes. Duties are taxes on goods coming into the United States, also called external revenue. Border taxes and customs duties, for which the U.S. Coast Guard, Customs, and Border Patrol are enforcement arms. Excises are taxes on sales, product use, and production, business procedures and privileges within the United States, also called internal revenue. Tobacco, liquor, amusement, corporation, and privilege taxes, for which alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, and Internal Revenue Service, IRS, bureaucracies are enforcement arms. Imposts is a general term for both duties and excises. Tax collection is in Article 1, separate power of the legislative branch. Bottom line, federal tax collection outside Congress's district control is unconstitutional, i.e., without authority. Even the otherwise conflict-ridden Amendment 16 says Congress shall have power to collect taxes. Indeed, Congress's present allowing of executive branch bureaucrats to collect taxes violates the common sense of the common law's required separation of powers. From the Constitution stems the three branches: legislative, Congress, executive, president, and judicial, courts, of the general government, each having separate and distinct powers and duties. Further, each branch is to keep the other two from using powers our Constitution has given it alone. For example, our courts, judicial branch, must object when the president, executive branch, judges crimes because the common law and our Constitution allot judicial power to the judicial branch alone. Congress must protest when the president, executive branch, collects taxes, or the courts, judicial branch, or the president, executive branch, enacts law because the common law and our Constitution lodge all legislative and tax collection power in Congress. So also the president must lay claim to his duty to command the armed forces of the United States if Congress or our courts tries to exercise direct military control, because our Constitution recognizes direct authority over the armed forces in the president, executive alone. By these separations, power is never to be gathered into the hand of a single will, ensuring that government never violates individual rights. Thus, also the headquarters and offices of the legislative, executive, and judicial powers must be far removed in separate buildings. For example, a prosecutor's office ought never be in the courthouse, and thus near the judge's chambers. Such practices breed incestuous relationships that destroy independent legal judgment and foster power gathering. The president or any other person who may himself be the accuser, counsel, judge, and jury, whose suspicions may be the evidence, his order, the sentence, is his officer, the executioner, and his breast, the sole record of the transaction, shall reduce the inhabitants of these states as outlaws to the absolute dominion of one man, and the barrier of the Constitution thus swept away from us all. No rampart now remains against the passions and the powers of a majority in Congress. James Madison and Thomas Jefferson, Kentucky Resolution of 1798. Taxation and collection are the non-delegable duties of Congress. However, the Internal Revenue Service is said to be an agency of the Treasury Department, and thus under the President's control, placing tax collection under command of the President and not, as this clause requires, under the control of Congress. In short, Congress must collect taxes, not the President's IRS bureaucrats. Nevertheless, Congress ignores this non-delegable duty. Congressmen, by allowing the President to do the dirty work, tax collection and enforcement, escape their responsibility for tax collection abuses. Once Americans learn that our Constitution makes Congress alone responsible for tax collection abuses, voters will throw the entire Congress out of office. Congress, by its unconstitutional laying of taxes it refuses to collect, dodges blame for the President's collection abuses. Both the President and Congress pass the buck for collection abuses. The IRS is to blame, says the Congressman. We only pass tax laws, not enforce them. But I can't stop the IRS, says the President, until Congress empowers me with legislation. Finally, the IRS closes the circle and the scheme is complete. Congress is to blame. We only enforce the laws it passes. Each branch shirks its sworn duty, points at the other, duping the people, who then shirk their duty as grand jurors to hold culprits punishable for crimes against Americans under the mere stolen banner of tax collection powers. Bottom line, because only Congress can lay taxes, our Constitution also tasks its alone with collecting taxes. Because congressmen face regular elections, only Congress will stop collection abuses, and if necessary to get reelected, it will end a tax altogether. If not, the people will elect new ones until Congress owns its constitutional responsibility to collect taxes. See this handbook, U.S. Declaration of 76, Section 19, U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3, Article 1, Section 9, Clause 4, Amendment 16, and comments discussing taxes. This welfare clause is no reference for commerce, but is a restriction on the power to tax. Section 8, Clause 2, to borrow money on the credit of the United States. Comment. The power of Congress is to borrow money on the credit of the United States, means on the back of the individual American, and thus is unwise except an immediate threat of national survival. Because the borrower, Congress, enslaves the individual American to the lender, the bankers. See Proverbs 22:7, where D.B. Avadith, translated slave, means to worship another by one's labor. Thus, one is to devote every activity, including one's work, unto the Lord. See 1 Corinthians 10:31. History speaks clear. The same banker, using debt, will readily enslave nations at war with each other. And again, slavery is supposed to be unconstitutional. Section 8, Clause 3, to regulate commerce with foreign nations and among the several states and with the Indian tribes. Comment. This is the Commerce Clause. Federal courts have stretched it thin to splitting apart, applying it with such abandon that it is now turned on its head. Government uses it as a license to unlimited power instead of a bar on government power, its real intent. Because the courts refuse to limit Congress's reach, as the Commerce Clause requires, law schools nowadays teach that Congress is king of the Commerce Clause. The framers, however, meant instead of this clause to empower Congress to keep the states from hampering the free flow of goods to and from other countries, the Indian tribes, and between the states themselves. Any act of Congress beyond this is unconstitutional, i.e., lawless. In fact, to regulate, says Madison, means to keep regular. That is, to keep constant streams of commerce, goods and services flowing across state lines. The use of the word commerce was new and fresh when our Constitution was drafted. According to the first edition of Encyclopedia Britannica of 1776, commerce signifies tangible goods, never services, and evidences of transactions such as communication by documents and communication by electric or light signal. Nevertheless, the Supreme Court interprets commerce to mean not only trade between the states, but also all kinds of commercial and non-commercial activity wholly occurring within the boundaries of each individual state. Indeed, commerce among the several states, i.e., interstate commerce, says the court includes not only government and transactions across state lines, but also any activity that never moves or extends across a state boundary, but that affects a term of emotion, or even could affect commerce in another state. Even non-activity is said to affect interstate commerce. Such interpretation is not only silly, but also destructive. Men and women languish in jails due to such absurd overreaching of Congress-made crimes, taking power where a person's action or inaction could affect someone's emotions. Such unconstitutional limitless power to meddle with commerce includes the power to fine and punish, to encourage and promote, to protect and prohibit, and even to restrain and destroy. Thus, Congress passes laws and provides funds to control farmland and livestock, and to forbid interstate shipment of otherwise lawful goods. In short, the general government, all three branches, misuses the Commerce Clause to hamper and even stop interstate commerce instead of to regulate it, i.e., keep it moving across state lines. Nowadays, Congress even bars shipment of certain items in order to manipulate prices. The Commerce Clause is to further the root reason for our Constitution, to limit the federal government. One must therefore never interpret it to give unlimited power to that government, swallowing the whole purpose of our Constitution. To sum up, contrary to fundamental rights and in violation of federalism, our Constitution's distribution of authority between the states and the general government, Congress lays false claim to authority to hamper movement of anything from people and livestock to firearms and grain, not only among the states but within each state. The other two branches of government ignores our Constitution, enforces Congress lawlessness. See this handbook, U.S. Declaration of 76, Section 18, and comment.